That which remains in the other two articles, I cannot see how it affords any occasion of an objection, and the reference it hath to the reformation and preservation of religion is easy and clear to any eye that is not wilfully blind. The preservation of peace between the two kingdoms, in the fifth article, being the pillar of religion. For how can religion and reformation stand if any blind and malignant Samson be suffered to pull down the pillars of peace and union? Besides, it was a breach of that very covenant in the text, as well as of that in our hands. The children of Israel and Judah, which had a long time been disunited, and in that disunion had many bloody and mortal skirmishes and battles, now at length, by the good hand of God upon them, take counsel to join themselves, first one to another, and then both unto God. Let us, quote, join ourselves, unquote, and then to, quote, the Lord in a perpetual covenant, unquote. Surely, not only this copy in the text, but the wormwood and the gall of our civil combustions and wars, which our souls may have in remembrance to our dying day, and be humbled within us, may powerfully persuade us to a cheerful engagement of ourselves for the preservation of a firm peace and union between the kingdoms to all posterity. And lastly, as peace is the pillar of religion, so mutual assistance and defense of all those that enter into this league and covenant, in the maintaining and pursuance thereof, mentioned in that sixth and last article, is the pillar of that peace. Divide et impera. Desert one another, and we can expose ourselves to the lusts of our enemies. And who can object against the securing of ourselves and the state, against a detestable indifferency or neutrality? But they must ipso facto proclaim to all the world that they intend beforehand to turn neutrals to apostates. To conclude, therefore, having thus examined the several articles of the covenant and the material clauses in those articles, and finding them to be, if not of the same nature, yet of the same design, with the preface and conclusion, the one whereof, as I told you, as at the entrance, obligeth us to the reformation of religion, the other of our lives, as serving to the immediate and necessary support and perfecting of these blessed and glorious ends and purposes, I shall need to apologize no further in the vindicating and asserting of this covenant before us. Could we be so happy as to bring hearts suitable to this service? Could we set up such aims and ends as the covenant holds forth? The glory of God, the good of the kingdoms, and honor of the king, to which this covenant and every several part thereof doth humbly prostrate itself, all would conspire to make us and our posterity after us an happy and glorious people to all generations. To them that object out of conscience, these poor resolutions may afford some relief, if not satisfaction, or, if these slender endeavors fall short of my design, and the reader's desires herein, I shall send them to their labors, who have taken more able and fruitful pains in this subject. To them that object out of a spirit of bitterness and malignity, nothing will suffice. He that is resolved to err is satisfied with nothing but that which strengthens his error. And these I leave to such arguments and convictions which the wisdom and justice of authority shall judge more proper, while I proceed in the second query propounded for the managing of this use of exhortation. Why? Or upon what considerations we may be persuaded to undertake this service, to enter into this holy covenant. And the first motive that may engage us hereunto is the consideration how exceedingly God hath been dishonored among us by all sorts of covenant violation, as hath been formerly discovered at large, in the avenging whereof the angel of the covenant stands as once at the door of paradise with a flaming sword in his hand, ready to cut us off and cast us out of this garden of God, this good land wherein he hath planted us thus long. I may say unto you, therefore, concerning ourselves, as once Moses in another case concerning Miriam, quote, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed? Unquote. If our father had but spit in our face by some inferior correction, should we not be ashamed? Ought we not to be greatly humbled before him? How much more when, quote, he hath poured out upon us the fury of his wrath, and it hath burned us, and the strength of battle, and it hath set on fire round about, unquote. Should we not lay it to heart, and use all means to pacify the fierceness of his anger, lest it burn down to the very foundations of the land, and none be able to quench it? Yea, secondly, a wonderful mercy, and in high favor we may count it from God, that yet such a sovereign means is left us for our recovery and reconciliation. Infinite condescension and goodness, it is in our God that, after so many fearful provocations by our unhallowed and treacherous dealing in the covenant, he will vouchsafe yet to have anything to do with us, that he will yet trust or try us any more, by admitting us to renew our covenant with his majesty, when he might, in justice, rather say unto us, as to the wicked, quote, What have I to do with you, that you should take my covenant into your mouths, seeing you hate instruction, and cast my words behind you, unquote. Certainly, had man broken with us, as oft as we have broken with God, we should never trust them any more, but account them as the offscouring of mankind, the vilest, the basest that ever trode upon God's ground. And yet that after so many unworthy and treacherous departures from our God, after so much unfaithfulness and perfidiousness in the covenant, such as is not in the capacity of one man to be guilty of towards another, that God should say to us, as once to his own people, quote, Thou hast played the harlot with many lovers, yet return to me, saith the Lord, unquote. O wonder of free grace! How might this privilege be offered to the apostate angels, which kept not the covenant of their creation, nor consequently their first estate, and to the rest of the damned souls in hell? Would God send an angel from heaven to preach unto them a second covenant, upon the laying hold whereon and closing wherewith they might be received into grace and favor? How could these poor damned spirits bestir themselves? What rattling of their red-hot chains? What shaking of their fiery locks? In a word, what an uproar of joy would there be in hell upon such glad tidings? How many glorious churches, as Capernaum, Bethsaida, the 7 churches of Asia, with others in latter times, who have, for their covenant violation, been cast down from the top of heaven, where once they sat in the beauty and glory of the ordinances, to the very bottom of hell, a dark and doleful condition. And God hath never spoken such a word of comfort, nor made any such offer of recovery and reconciliation unto them, as he hath done unto us this day. Quote, Surely he hath not dealt so with any people, unquote. Let it be our wisdom and our thankfulness to accept of it with both hands, yea, both with hands and hearts. If God give us hearts suitable to this price, that is in our hands, covenanting hearts, as he gives us yet leave and opportunity to renew our covenant, it will be to me a blessed security that we are not yet a lost people, and a new argument of hope that he intends to do England good. If neglected and despised, whether this may not be the last time that ever England shall hear from God, I much doubt, unless it be in such a voice as that is, quote, I would have healed England, and she will not be healed, because I would have purged thee, and thou art not purged. Thou shalt not be purged from thy filthiness any more, till I have caused my fury to rest upon thee, unquote. The Lord forbid such a thing, quote, for how shall we escape if we neglect so great salvation, unquote. Thirdly, we may be mightily encouraged to this service, inasmuch as it is prophesied of as a great duty and privilege in gospel times. You see, the evangelical day is one of those days wherein this prophecy and promise must be fulfilled, and it is the same privilege and happiness which was prophesied of under the type of the sticks made one in the hand of the prophet Ezekiel in Ezekiel 37, verses 16 and 22. For though in the literal sense it be to be understood, as it is expressed, the happy reunion of that unhappy divided seed of Jacob, Joseph, and Ephraim, Israel, and Judah, yet in a gospel sense it is to be applied to the churches of Jesus Christ in the latter days, which though formerly divided and miserably torn by unnatural quarrels and wars, yet Christ, the King of the church, hath a day wherein he will make them one in his own hand. The great and gracious design which we humbly conceive Christ hath now upon these two nations, England and Scotland, even after all their sad divisions and civil discords, to make them one in his right hand to all generations. And this gives me assurance that the work shall go on and prosper, yea, prosper gloriously, it having a stronger foundation to support it than heaven and earth, for they are upheld by a word of power, But this work which is called the new heavens and the new earth is upheld by a word of promise. For, quote, we according to his promise look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwells righteousness, unquote. I say, by a word of prophecy and promise, which, it seems, is stronger than God himself. For his word binds him, so that he can as soon deny himself as deny his promise. There shall be, therefore, an undoubted accomplishment of these things which are told us from the Lord. God will find or make a people who shall worship him in this holy ordinance, and upon whom he will make good all the mercy and truth, all the peace and salvation which is bound up in it. Only therefore let me caution and beseech you not to be wanting to yourselves in your own happiness. Quote, Judge not yourselves unworthy of such a privilege, unquote, nor, quote, reject the counsel of God against your own souls. Sin not against your own mercies, unquote, by withdrawing yourselves from this service or rebelling against it. Quote, God will exclude none that do not exclude themselves, unquote. Yea, further, this seems to speak an argument of hope, that the calling of the Jews and the fullness of the Gentiles is not far behind, inasmuch as God begins now to pour out his promise in the text upon the churches in a more eminent manner than ever we or our fathers saw in a gospel sense. And surely gospel performance must make way for that full and universal accomplishment thereof, which shall unite, quote, Israel and Judah, Jew and Gentile, in one perpetual covenant unto the Lord, that shall never be forgotten, unquote.